Today we are talking about how immersive technologies are driving revenue in financial service. And if we can summarize that, we're looking at the different types of extended reality and how they can actually bring a return on investment for financial institutions or other organizations who are looking to adopt this new technology, and what would be the benefit for them, right? It would be an upfront investment to be able to modernize your technology, to be able to interact with the different types of technologies that are out there. But what's the return that the business is going to get? We know that the future of immersive technology is only getting better when we start looking at things like the Google Glasses and how people are already starting to adopt those technologies in their personal lives. So people are going to expect that kind of customer experience in their other interactions as well. So hopefully we can start getting a vision of how businesses can start leveraging immersive technologies. I'll let you go ahead and change the slide, Eric. So note that this session is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, now's the time to drop off. It will be posted online, so anyone who wants to watch it after the fact, they can. And if you have any questions that you weren't able to ask on air, you can always send us a follow-up email. But I do want to make sure that everybody knows that this is being recorded for future use. And my name is Angèle Taylor. I've been with 4Point for over 10 years now. I'm a two-time AEM champion. I am certified forms expert. And just two little interesting facts about me. I have two cats, Gizmo and Mika, and I collect retro video games, like all the way back to like Atari games, not just when I talk to my nephew and he's like, "Oh, you have a PlayStation?" I'm like, "Yes, I have that as well," but we go back to stuff my dad used to have. And I'll let our next presenter introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Stevens. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Engagement with 4Point. Been there, it's actually 7 years now. It just transitioned. And it says, interestingly enough, I'm one of the founding architects of digital forms because I've been doing this for 35 plus years, involved in all aspects of the form industry. So not just the data capture, not just document generation and those kinds of things, but also record management, security, data integrations, building applications around forms, digital signatures, the implications of accessibility, all of the different pieces that affect forms in all of the different variations. I don't have cats. I've got 3 dogs. That's Bella, Buddy, and Piper. And I love to cook. That's something that I do that breaks me out of the day-to-day routine.
So I want to encourage everyone to ask questions. You have the forms experts here now, so if this is the time to be asking the questions. You can get an immediate response and we can start building engagement. And I don't want you guys to wait to the very end to ask questions. It's important that you ask the question as you're thinking about it, so that way you can remain focused on the rest of the content that we're talking about. We will answer the question at the very end when we have time for our Q&A, but again, ask the questions as soon as they pop in your head so you don't forget them. So just some housekeeping. We're going to look at the agenda here. We've already done the introductions on who we are and that this is being recorded. But from a topic perspective, what can you expect to see today during this session? Well, we're going to talk about what extended reality, what is XR, what is it going to be, and why do we want to care about it now? When is it going to be popular? How is it going to be interacting with our day-to-day lives, and how is it going to affect our businesses, and how is it going to affect our customers? What revenue growth looks like when people start leveraging different types of extended reality or different types of extended experiences, moving away from that traditional paper experience that a lot of us are traditionally used to. We also have some real world case studies of people who have moved past that traditional paper legacy manual processing and are starting to look towards the future into extended reality and other different ways to engage differently with our customers. And we want to look at how they did what they did and the benefits that they're seeing from it. So we can continue to see potential new benefits if we keep pushing further. We also want to make sure that you have a plan on how can you get started. If this is something you're interested in, but you haven't had a chance to actually get into it yet, because this is new trending technology where it's not adopted everywhere yet. You may be curious as to, well, how do I even get started on planning a pilot or moving forward at all with trying to extend the way we engage with our customers to be able to get those benefits? We want to give you guys a strategy on how to move forward. And then will be our Q&A. So again, if you have any questions, make sure you add them to the chat so you don't forget what your question was.
And with that, then let's talk about what extended reality is. And many people are familiar with the idea of virtual reality, of the headset scenarios that you put on, and the headset then drives a immersive scenario that is fully a virtual environment. And the way that we think of that today is usually around games. And that is often the place that technologies get tested in the first place. A lot of gaming pushes technology to its limits, and then we can lower the cost associated with it and roll it into other areas. And there's really three ways that we define it. Virtual reality is one part of an extended reality scenario. But the other two areas where we're seeing growth, and these are the areas that are more focused on business-oriented situations, is augmented reality and mixed reality. Augmented reality is a scenario where you're using an interface, usually glasses, much lighter, not as bulky, and so you can actually see through them into the real world. But what's happening is the glasses are looking with you, and they're overlaying information about what you're seeing around you. The Google glasses, the Google XR glasses that are coming out, the Ray-Bans that are with Meta, there's a variety of different ones that are coming out now. And these offer a completely new way of interfacing with applications and the world together. Even to the extent, if you use some of the more advanced Google and Apple AI camera technologies, one of the things that I can do, I have a Google Pixel, and one of the things I can do with the Google Pixel is I can use the camera on it to guide me around when I'm walking, to be able to see where I'm going to go. And that's a version of augmented reality, where it's using the camera rather than the glasses. But now imagine that on top of you. This gives people a different perspective associated with it. Some places where we see augmented reality being used are things like equipment inspections. That's one of the early adopters in terms of a commercial application, is using augmented reality to be able to go in, look at a piece of equipment, have information presented to you about that piece of equipment. When was it last serviced? What is the manufacturer safety data sheet associated with it? And then to be able to interact with it and identify that needs a replacement to it. And that's where a lot of the challenges come in integrating it into a business environment. And the same occurs in a virtual reality scenario where you're working with different pieces in a virtual reality that are reflecting the business that you're dealing with. Mixed reality is a combination of those two things, where you're getting a overlay on top of it, the ability to say, this is this piece of equipment, or that is that location associated with it, but then it provides other aspects to it so that you can move around inside of the interface. Some other scenarios where we're seeing these kinds of technologies start to be incorporated into businesses and into government scenarios, and this is one that's near and dear to my heart, is I'm sitting here with a laptop screen and two monitors next to me, two medium-sized monitors, not really large monitors, but with The augmented reality glasses, I can get a 200-inch monitor displayed in front of me that I can completely interact with, that I can then work on a computer with the glasses being my monitor. And that's another aspect that we're seeing that's improving the way that people are interacting with all of the different pieces associated with it. Some of the challenges that people have associated with this is the adoption scenarios, but it's also the internal technologies. You may have built a web application that someone's interfacing with. You may have built back-end systems that have constrained interfaces, maybe even green screens pass through, whatever it happens to be. How do you transition those into this new interface, this new way of interacting with things? Many organizations have not really embraced mobile applications for a lot of their customer or citizen self-service capabilities. So how do you then make the jump from you don't have that into these kinds of augmented reality scenarios? And we're going to talk about some examples associated with that. When we talk about extended reality and the different types of uses that we see in different marketplaces, what we look at is what are the potential benefits associated with it. And one of the things that we see right off the top is a reduction in service resolution time, because more information can be presented more efficiently and more effectively in these kinds of interfaces. It makes it easier for that person, whether they're internal or external users, to be able to do the job, finish the information, provide what they need to do, onboard themselves, fill out a know your customer form so that you and the broker have the information that they need effectively. What that does is means that they're not stopping in the middle, they're not breaking the flow of the process, and they're able to finish it without needing extra assistance. The other thing that it allows you to do, and this is a benefit that we can get from a mobile perspective and a web perspective, but that is much more is desired from a user perspective in an augmented or extended reality scenario, is personalization. Individuals want to know that you understand and know what they're trying to do and what they're looking for. The classic example that we talk about in terms of customer self-service is they're a customer, they've logged into your portal, they're filling out a form, and it asks you for my name and address. You know who I am. You know what my address is. You've been sending things to my address. You know what my email is. You send things to my email. You probably sent the link to get to this form in my email. Why are you asking me it again? And so personalization is a critical factor to it. And the more we move into these extended reality scenarios, personalization is going to be a critical aspect of it. What we anticipate is adoption of extended reality technologies is going to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars by 2030. It is something that is going to start to be used by many different organizations as a way of providing enhanced service capabilities for users, citizens, constituents, external consumers, and customers. Also used internally. Imagine that you're working on something internally and you can have many different screens open without straining yourself, without having to glance around and look. And that when you glance at something, it's brought to the fore immediately so that you can now start working on that piece of it, but it's still over here in your corner so you can see what you need to see on all of the different pieces, right? The other thing, and again, this is not augmented reality or extended reality specific, but is that consumers today will switch brands after one bad experience. It's a critical factor that we need to understand what is the expectation. That expectation crosses all industry boundaries, but is especially true in financial services where Organizations have more options today. Individuals have more options today from organizations, from many different companies, and they're constantly bombarded with switch to our system. So those organizations that can move ahead and be leading edge and provide the value, provide the personalization, and provide the enhanced capabilities that people are expecting today tend to get those. And we're going to talk about some examples of what some organizations have done to try to move in that direction. From a forms perspective, it is a new way of thinking about what we do with forms, what we do with data, what we do with documents of record, what we do with signatures, what we do with all of the different pieces that go into a form today. And we talk about it from our perspective with a lot of experience in dealing with forms as breaking the 8.5 by 11 model. So many times we see organizations and all they did was they took an 8.5 by 11 page or an A4 in Europe and they put it up on the website as a fillable PDF and then they're done. They're done. We've automated forms. No, you haven't. And that is not what the users, the consumers, your customers expect from you. They expect better from you. Maybe they're not expecting complete virtual reality, but they're expecting better from that. And what we see for organizations that have taken that step and moved out of, broken through that 8.5 by 11 paradigm, broken through that barrier, is much higher completion and conversion rates. And when they don't have the higher completion and conversion rates, they can actually get analytics and metrics that tell them why people are not filling out the form. Where did they stop? What's the challenge with that field? This is fields always people are struggling with, and allows them to test different variations of wording or flow or whatever it happens to be. And by auto-filling information, we can substantially reduce the manual data entry that you're asking your customers to do on your behalf or that you're doing internally. We can automate a lot of that and fill that information out. And that comes back to that personalization. You know my address. You don't have to ask me for it. If you need it on the form, you can insert it. What it also does is it shifts long linear processes into guided nonlinear navigation. The ability to start a form in one environment. Imagine the ability to start a form inside of augmented reality glasses, realize you're missing a piece of information, go gather that, take a scan of your driver's license, but upload that on your PC or upload that on your phone and continue the process on different systems, on different interfaces. And there's no reason why you can't create a mechanism that allows people to enter information in multiple different ways and to be able to give people different options. There may be people who still need a piece of paper. They may not have access to the computers. Okay, that's fine. We want to do that all from one environment. That's a critical factor because otherwise you're maintaining multiple different systems. We also want to incorporate AI-based assistants that help the user, guides them through the process, ensures that that required field was actually filled out, that handles transformations of dates so they can type in the date any way they want, but the AI automatically formats it in the form properly for you. And it changes it from static PDFs and paper documents to interactive spatial interfaces that allow them to perhaps look at multiple pages to see what else is being asked of me. What else do I need to, oh, I do need my driver's license. Well, I better go get that ahead of time. So it changes the nature of how people are interacting with the forms and the information that you're looking to gather from them. Let me talk about 3 examples. Now, these examples are precursors to full immersive technologies, and they're laying the foundation so that each one of these organizations is trying to put in place tools that make it easier for people to interact with their financial services. So Monzo puts together a a mobile first, customer centric approach to banking. And what they did was they redesigned all of their banking flows, like account setup, loan applications, into interactive conversational experience. They leveraged AI and heuristic flow models so that they've got control and structure, so that they use AI where it's necessary for natural language processing, but that they still have regulatory control, that the appropriate pieces were asked as they went through that. They're using that to engage their audience and ask the information that's necessary from them so that they can increase their growth and increase their retention by making it a more personalized experience, a friendlier experience from the user's perspective, and very much a what the new users expect from this kind of interaction. What they also saw when they did this is a substantial reduction in what we call forms confusion. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this form. I don't know which section I'm supposed to fill out. And so many times we go into an organization and we look at their forms and we're trying to put a roadmap together. And the first step is make your forms less confusing. Don't even go automated. Just make your forms less confusing. Don't have a form that asks them to do 35 different things based on what they answered in the first section, right? If this is too many examples to give. And what we don't want to do is confuse them. And by using AI, we're only going to ask what we need from you. So even though the form might include a section for a beneficiary, the beneficiary doesn't apply in the case that you selected. AI doesn't ask. Now, the form shouldn't ask either. It shouldn't be on the form. But if it is, the AI can help smooth that out. So it can improve the experience, even though your forms aren't necessarily in the best shape that they need to be. And what they found in their target audience was Generation Z and millennial users, is they got improved interaction with those audiences. So they were really able to put together a package that appealed to the target audience that they wanted to provide banking services to. BBVA is a global financial group headquartered in Spain, and they partnered with Accenture to transform digital sales and onboarding. And so what they used was AI-powered document automation to create a mechanism that improved customer experiences across the onboarding, the creation of new accounts, the addition of new information associated with accounts. And what this does is it mimics real world interactions, again, using an interactive process that goes through that combination of workflow with natural language processing on top of it to be able to have a conversation, but also to be able to say, these are all the documents that need to be filled out for this process, not just inside the form, but also I need to add this form, I need to add this form, I need to add this form, and have all of those pieces controlled inside it. What that also did was allowed them to then take that information and automatically distribute it inside the organization so that the appropriate data, and if necessary, the filled out form, the document that was necessary, goes to each of the groups so that all of their systems, even though they're all disparate systems, all of those are updated effectively and efficiently. And what that does is reduce their internal effort associated with it and their internal costs. This resulted in 117% growth in new customers and a 70% reduction in onboarding time. Imagine that. That's improved customer experience because the customer's going in and going, it's really simple. They asked me just what they needed to know and everything went through. And 100% reduction in the handling of the data for key services during the onboarding process. So they've changed the way that they've done this using these kinds of technologies. Last example is Erica, an AI-powered document navigation tool from Bank of America. And what they did was they created a mechanism that allowed people to interactively communicate and talk to effectively a chatbot, but a very sophisticated chatbot, to find the thing, the document, the form, the whatever I need for this thing. And that's a tremendous challenge for so many organizations, is how do customers find the document that they need? And so many times we see organizations try to create a forms portal or a document portal, web pages. They try to enhance the search capabilities, and people still can't find it, and they still have to call and call a help desk, or they have to call their broker or their financial advisor and say, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. And the broker and advisor still has the same struggle. They can't find those. So what they created at Bank of America is a multimodal environment that allows people to use touch screens, their phones, visual clues, and voice to be able to try to identify what is the document that they wanted to do. They integrated that through many of their different systems so that it's always present, available to help them. So that if somebody is looking at a page, looking at a particular piece, are you looking for a form related to? Are you looking for a document related to? Here are some other documents that are related to what you're looking at. Maybe these are what you're looking for. That system has over 1.5 billion interactions annually and has substantially reduced the number of support and help calls that they're getting into their systems for people trying to find what they're looking for. And that creates a much higher level of satisfaction with their customers. So it completely changes the way people are finding things. And all of these pieces, well, they're talking about doing it inside of standard browser or mobile-based environments. They're all looking at how that's going to be extended into augmented reality, to extended reality, to interface with users who are using that technology. And you can hear things like the voice capabilities. Well, that works perfectly then with an augmented reality multimodal screen that I've got in front of me. The ability to ask it to find a document, find the document, present the document, and then conversationally fill out that document, fill out that form, and then say, submit it back into the organization and reduce the back-end processing associated with it. So those are some examples that we see in organizations around the world that are starting to embrace this kind of shift in how they gather information, how they process it, how they interact with their users, with their customers. When we talk about how to get started, this is new technology. This is truly a shift in the way that we're thinking about the communication and the interaction. And there's a lot of pieces that have to be pulled together to make all of this work. And so the first and most important step is to start experimenting as soon as possible. Experimentation could be proof of concepts. They could take real world forms and apply those. They could be focused on internal forms where you're just working on your HR onboarding and improving that process, because that whole scenario I talked about of finding the right form and then dispersing it to the right organizations, those are all the same kind of things that customers need, but you also need for employees. If you get that right, then you can move it over to that scenario. Focus on high impact use cases from two perspectives. One of the first things that a lot of people do when they start looking at these kinds of scenarios is saying, I'm going to take my most important, most valuable, most complex form and try to do that with it because that would be the most value. Yes, but no. Got to be careful, because one of the challenges with that is that might be good for experimentation and learning, but actually putting that into play may touch too many systems. How many systems have to change to actually put that into production? So look for high impact that you can get in a short period of time. How can I do this with a small number of interesting, important forms, but that aren't as complex from a data integration, a workflow, a business process perspective, so that you can get some demonstrated value out of this advanced technology? That will lead to more groups in your organization and more executive buy-in saying, yeah, that's a good thing. We should invest. We should roll that out to the others. Oh, we have to change some systems. We have to enhance some systems. We have to adjust some data structures associated with it. That gets you that buy-in. So look for high impact, but look for high impact that you can get some value demonstration early on. Start small with a pilot. Excuse me. Start small with a pilot, put it in place, put it live, evaluate it, get feedback, get an understanding of what the people involved with it, what experience they had, what was positive, what was negative, what would they change if they could, and take that feedback back and use that as part of your enhancement as you roll it out. This should be a phased approach with various different forms or processes being enhanced with these kinds of capabilities over a period of time. This is not a shift of everything, because not everyone's going to use this new advanced technology. You're still going to need to support users who don't necessarily want to use that. So what you need is one environment, one platform that can then support all of these different capabilities, support all of these different use cases. Partner with experts, whether it's a large consulting firm or a boutique firm that focuses on specific areas associated with it. Partner with experts. A lot of this is changing. A lot of this is moving very, very quickly. AI capabilities are being enhanced on a daily basis. Sometimes it seems the technology around extended reality is changing and shifting constantly. Partner with experts who understand these things so that they can say, yeah, you want to be here right now and look to be there in the future, and can lay out a roadmap for you. For any project, but this especially, is measure, iterate, and scale, because you want to ensure that you're getting the results that you're expecting from it. You want to ensure that you're taking the feedback, taking the suggestions, understanding how to make it better for everyone, bring that back into the organization, iterate on that, and then begin to ramp up the scaling, either in terms of moving it out to a larger audience or moving it broadly into more processes inside of your organization. One of the things that we'd like to do is offer to you is some of our time to talk through how this applies in your organization, how it could fit, show you some technology examples where this might apply, so you can see how these different kinds of pieces might connect together. So it's a 1 hour one-on-one with your organization, focused on your specific target areas, your specific business processes, and your specific issues and challenges, to understand how extended reality technologies could benefit from you, and general AI technologies when it relates to business processes, forms, and the user experience. Help you define what the critical next steps are for you, and start to generate a vision for you so that you can understand how you're going to get from where you are today to where you want to be. Contact marketing@4point.com, and we'd be happy to set that up for you. And that's all I had for today. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric. That was very informative, and I'm sure we all learned a lot today. We do have some pre-submitted questions, and I want to remind anyone who's on the call, if they want to add a question to the chat, please feel free to do that now. But we do have some pre-submitted questions, and so we'll go through those. The first one we have, what's the best starting point for integrating extended reality into document-heavy workflow like onboarding or compliance?
So the first step in all of these kinds of things is to have a vision of what you're trying to achieve, okay, and to lay out a roadmap associated with it. But it comes back to what we said in the getting started section is you need to start to experiment and get what we would classify as a proof of concept or a proof of technology so that you could then build out a pilot. And so what you want to do in that particular scenario is sit down and identify what you're trying to achieve out of this. Are you trying to move everything in the document process all into a extended reality scenario and make that available to people? Is it replacing a traditional mechanism, or is it a alternative to a traditional mechanism? So how do we want to balance those two pieces? The other thing that's critical to look at when you're examining any kind of a process like that is what are the other systems that are touching onto that environment. When you have an onboarding scenario, and let's take we'll take a wealth management example. So I want to open up a investment account. I talk to my broker. My broker is going to gather certain pieces of information from me, but they may ask me to fill out certain forms. Okay. So how do you want to do that in an augmented reality scenario? Oh, filling out the forms, that's great. We can put the forms there. But where does that data need to go? Where does it need to go in the broker system? Where does it need to go in the financial institution system? How do we want to move that back and forth? How do we want to pull data out so that I'm not requiring you to fill out all of your information if you already have accounts with me, right? So you want to understand what the state of those different systems are and how ready they are to be able to pull that data in. Now, some systems are not ready to do that. That's okay, because there are ways to isolate those systems, to create a mechanism that we can engage with an advanced capability such as extended reality or AI-based forms and document processing without tampering with the back-end systems. We do this all the time of integrating mainframe applications and pushing and pulling data from mainframe applications with advanced user interfaces. So there are different ways to do it, but knowing that is a critical factor to it. Then do it at a pilot, get something working, okay? Might only do pieces of it, but what you're doing is demonstrating the value of it in the different pieces. That's a key aspect to it so that you can show this works in this scenario, this works in this scenario. Now we can roll it out to a larger audience, or now we can extend it farther in the process.
Great, thanks for that, Eric. That was a really complete answer. So I'm sure they have everything they need to do that one. Next question. How do you measure a return on investment for extended reality or AI enhanced forms compared to traditional digital or print forms?
Okay, so the first thing that you need to do to be able to measure and compare is have a measurement today on what's happening. And many organizations do not actually have customer satisfaction or ROI measurements on their forms and their documents today. And that comes from a mindset of, well, I have to do it anyway, so it really doesn't matter. And they're not broken, they work, so they must be okay. But if you actually go out and do a user survey, go to your customers, ask them what that experience was like, you find that no, they're not happy with that experience. That's not the experience that they wanted. So that's your first step, is to actually go in and understand what is happening inside your organization today and what the reaction is. One of the other factors on ROI on current form architectures is that there's a lot of disconnected pieces inside your organization where you actually can't measure the ROI in the correct way because the systems don't talk to each other properly. So now you're going to have to make some estimates, but you should do that. You should make those estimates of this takes this long and it involves this many moving parts or this many people, and therefore the cost associated is generally considered to be this, right? Or an overall cost. If you have a forms group, they may be able to tell you, well, this form is used this many times. I'll give you an example of one organization that had, they have 21,500 forms and documents, and those are all customer facing, and they needed to make a marketing change to it. And they determined that making the marketing change was going to require touching all 21,000 forms. And that was a challenge, except marketing said that it was necessary to do that because that represented 38 million customer touch points per year. That's not the website. That's documents that people are touching. Your forms and documents are a critical factor for your business. So now they have to figure out, okay, what are we going to do about that? Well, there's an ROI measure right there. Is we've got 38 million touch points that aren't compliant with what marketing wants to do. Okay, that's marketing. But hold on, if it's not compliant with marketing, is it compliant with the regulatory bodies? Is the right terms and conditions included? Are they all included? That's a lot of documents to check, a lot of things to look at associated with it. That's an ROI measure, but you have to have that first. Then, when you go to the new systems, when you go to the new environments, when you go to extended reality, when you go to AI-based form filling, put in actual measures. Put in how long does it take to process this? How many times did the person have to come back to it if they're allowed to come back to it? Measure that. Put the measurement into it. That will then give you a lot of information about what's happening in it to be able to see. Then you've got the previous, now you've got this one. You can compare and say, yeah, that was a substantial reduction. But critical, know where you are right now, and then add the automation as part of the project to enhance this customer onboarding scenario or know your customer scenario or whatever it happens to be.
Perfect. Another really good answer. The next question I have here in the pre-submitted questions are, what are the biggest technical or organizational barriers to adopting XR or AI in financial services?
I would say, and this is more an opinion piece than any particular data point that I've got, but I would say that it is just the new technology problem. That financial services, like a lot of organizations, aren't necessarily at the leading edge of technology adoption. And so we see this being adopted in a lot of other areas where it's providing direct and immediate value. And so there's a hesitation to include this. One of the things that's shifting, though, is that organizations as a whole are getting mandates to how can we use AI to create a better user experience and to reduce internal costs, to reduce operational effort associated with things. And so we are seeing a desire to have that conversation. Now, there are many challenges associated with that. There are many concerns that people have, but that's going to shift as it goes along. But really, it is the inertia of organizations to change and the recognition that doing these kinds of changes requires effort and work on the organization's part. It requires expenditure. So how do they ensure that they get the value from it, the return on investment we talked about? How do they get that out of it in an appropriate time frame?
Okay, here's an interesting one. How does the enhanced forms impact compliance and auditability in regulated environments?
Yeah, that's a really good one. And That has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. But in general, it really doesn't, if you do it in a way that mirrors the same experience that they've got today. And that is, in fact, one of the first steps that we recommend for organizations. If the form that you're going to fill out today is something that a customer fills out on a web page and then makes a PDF and emails you the PDF, let's apply AI, let's apply augmented reality, let's apply new technologies to that, but still produce the PDF, because that is your regulatory document. Still produce a PDF. Now, one of the things that financial services are not adopting at a level that I think that they should is customer digital signatures. Send that document to me as an email. I will digitally sign it. I will digitally sign it and send it back to you. Now you have a digital record. That is 100% compliant. That they looked at the document. It was the document. It had all the terms and conditions. They were given everything that they needed to. What we did was we just made it easier for them to get their data into that compliant document, that regulatory approved document, that document that legal has looked at all the terms and conditions. So what we want to do is make it is not force the user to fill out the form, because the form is what we need from them. Let them give us the information in the way that makes sense for them. If I want to give you the information by talking to my watch, I should be able to give you the information by talking to my watch. Then you put it in the document you need. Then you give me the document. I digitally sign the document and you take it back. And now you have a document of record. Now you have everything that you need. The other piece to that, though, is also shifting. And we're seeing this shift. It's occurred over the last 10 to 15 years. We're seeing it with a lot of personal banking, is change what is defined as the document of record. It used to be many, many, many years ago, when I was much, much younger, that if you wanted to go and get cash from a bank, you had to go in, you had to fill out a form. Okay. You had to present ID. There is somewhere in a bank somewhere, one of the signatures from when I was 16 and opened a bank account. My signature does not look the same now. If you go to compare, you would reject that. Well, we don't do that anymore. You go to an ATM. Even if I go to the actual desk and actually talk to someone to get a larger sum of money if I need that, all right, they're using my bank card. They ask me a couple of questions. I might have to sign a document at the end. That was the handover of the cash signature for receipt. So it's completely changed there in terms of what the compliance requirements are. Redefine what a document of record is in your organization. The document of record is the data, and all we're doing is providing you with this PDF as a record for your records. Okay, but we need to make sure things like, if there is specific terms and conditions that you need to know that the user has reviewed, well, then that needs to be part of the interface. That needs to be part of the experience, saying you need to be aware of these following pieces, right? But if I'm doing that in extended reality, do not give me 2 pages of PDF boilerplate that has, if you're in this state, it's this. If you're in that state, it's this. If you're in this country, it's this. You know where I am. Give me the ones that apply to me. And that makes a tighter transaction. That's crisper and cleaner from a compliance and a legal perspective. Okay. All right. But it does require more work, ensuring that you're giving them that. But that's personalization. You need to know these things. You are agreeing to these things. Are you okay with that? Yes, I'm okay with that. All right, then you agreed with it. So there's different ways of handling that kind of compliance and agreements. And we can talk about that with organizations. We talk about digital signatures and how to handle those kinds of approvals without a physical signature, and how to handle compliance in forms and all of those pieces.
Can forms be enhanced without requiring customers to purchase special equipment like headsets or hardware?
Yes, they absolutely can be enhanced in a browser scenario, in a mobile scenario. All of that is entirely possible to add additional capabilities. We call that AI form filling. It's the ability of the AI to help you fill out the form by asking you the right questions based on what the form is, but still produce that compliant document that you need at the end. And then give you the data if you need to move it around, or generate multiple documents in the onboarding case. Generate multiple documents and multiple data streams that are then fed into the different parts of the organization so that everybody gets just what they need for their records. And the user doesn't have to worry about all of those. The user doesn't have to fill out 5 different forms for 5 different groups. They can fill out one piece of information, one interaction, and we can disperse it to the 5 different scenarios. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do to augment what you're doing today. And it really depends on where you're starting from. Some organizations are farther and more advanced. We have organizations that are already using interactive mobile and browser native environments to capture all of this data, still producing compliant documents out of the other end, using digital signatures. Their shift is more to the extended reality and AI-based capabilities. But if you're still using Acrobat-based fillable forms as your interface, there's going to be steps in between. We want to add value, right? We don't want to jump you all the way there unless you say that's where you want to jump to. But you probably need to go through more of a transition to add value along the way. And you're going to get improved user experience in each of these pieces. You're going to get improved ROI and reduced errors associated with it. So there are absolutely things that we can do without jumping all the way to the most modern technology.
So I have 2 more questions that I think we might be able to sneak in before we go over. But if we do go over, we'll stay here until you answer those questions. Again, any questions from the live audience, put them in. We will stay until all the questions are answered. So this question is, what role does AI play in enhancing XR document workflows? I know you already talked a little about how AI can be used on the data capture portion of it, but can you speak a little bit more specifically about workflows?
So it can handle it in multiple different scenarios. Often you want workflows, you want the business processes. They're there for a reason, and they have certain rules. Okay. Let me take a simple internal example. I'm going to fill out a vacation request. Okay. We've got an online form. I go online, I fill out the vacation request, I hit submit. There's a workflow behind that that says, hey, that has to get routed to your manager, has to get routed to HR. Okay. And does it, I don't know if there's other rules associated with it, but I know those 2 things have to occur. Okay. Those are very specific, and we don't want AI guessing at that. But one of the challenges is that a lot of organizations actually don't know what their business processes are, because their business processes evolved from a paper flow. So that when I filled out a form, I knew, or there was instructions on the form about what I'm supposed to do with it. Oh, you're supposed to send this to your manager and to HR. Oh, all right. Well, then I'll email it to do that. So if you have automation in place, we want to use that automation. If you don't have automation in place, then AI can be very, very valuable in acting as a monitoring mechanism. AI can then be told, these should normally be routed in the following manner. So you're going to get this, you're going to figure out who it has to go to, and then you're going to package it up and send it. And so the combination of AI as a precursor to a business process. Now, most AI has the knowledge capabilities back and forth of what should be done associated with something, but it doesn't actually have the movement capabilities, the interaction capabilities. So what we want to do is combine those two things together to say, okay, AI, where should this go? Oh, it should be routed to Barry and Mira. Okay, right? Oh, in your case, it needs to be routed to, X, Y, and Z because this is a different scenario. So AI can be used as a tool to help us understand what the workflow should be doing and help augment those kinds of capabilities. It can also be inserted for exception handling. That's a critical aspect because you might have worked out and we see this in chatbot scenarios where we have a linear, a flow associated with a fixed chatbot that goes, if they ask this, then go here. If they ask this, then go here. If they ask this, then go here. And then they go, I don't know what they asked, then go to AI. We can do the same thing in a business process. We can say, this is the route that we're going to do, and something doesn't work in the way. Oh, Mira is not here. She's on vacation. AI, what should I do with this next? And let it be the exception handler. All right. Now, it needs some knowledge and some understanding. It may need to be trained associated with it. So, how you're doing that in terms of the training of the AI, but that's an area that we're seeing some real interest on, is using it as the exception handler, as the unusual circumstance handler. You've got a standard path, it handles the strange paths that you didn't code for.
Perfect. And the last question, which is pretty nice summary question, and again, an opinion question. So feel free to use
I've
your
got those.
35 years experience to give us some ideas. They're asking, where do you think the industry is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years around extended reality and AI?
Um, so I'll answer the AI part first. Is AI to me, especially right now, is a very, very smart intern that doesn't understand my business. And so that's how we're using it internally. That's how we're seeing customers using it. Even generative AI, it's okay, you're a really good graphic designer, but that's not exactly what I wanted kind of scenario. And so we want to ensure that we're treating AI not as a replacement, but as an augmentation for the people as part of the process. I am a strong believer in humans in the decision-making loop. All right. It ultimately comes down to, and this comes back to the compliance and regulatory question, it ultimately comes down to human decisions. What we want to do is use AI to augment our knowledge, augment our understanding, improve our ability to synthesize large volumes of complex information so that we can make better decisions, so we can make decisions faster. And that's how I see AI being used. That's how I personally use it in a lot of circumstances. So that's where I see it. And I see it evolving more and more into that and becoming more and more part of a daily natural scenario, is that AI is something that's there to say, okay, this just changed. Go get me a synthesis of this. Get me some understanding of this. Help me put together a paper, a position, whatever it is on that. But it still is me. It's still mine. I'm just getting assistance to do that. Like I said, it's a really, really smart intern that really doesn't have a lot of real world experience. And so you have to go, yeah, that was a lovely thought, but it failed 3 times in the past 10 years. So we're not going to do that. Okay. That kind of thing. Extended reality, I see tremendous value for augmented reality capabilities inside of commercial organizations as an adjunct. I can see myself in 3 to 5 years not having computer screens in front of me, having a computer, okay, but doing the work in an augmented reality headset where everything's visible across in front of me. I have effectively an entire wall of monitor capabilities that I can move things around, I can manipulate them, but I can also still type. I can still work the way that I'm still expecting to work. That combination with AI prompting me and delivering the things that I need to work on today and helping me work on those kinds of things. Hey, it looks like you're starting a document. That document looks like it might be very similar to this other one that you did a year and a half ago. Do you want me to pull that up and see what I can pull out of it for it? Yes, I would. Now I want that inside of my vision associated with it. Virtual reality inside of the commercial organizations, outside of game scenarios, I see these incredibly valuable for training purposes because now you can control them and get exactly what you want displayed. So now I can use virtual reality to train you on my systems, train you, onboard you as an employee much, much faster, get you up to speed much faster. Then when you switch to the augmented reality, it's the same as what you saw in the virtual reality, right? And mixed reality can be used in those kinds of scenarios also, depending on the circumstances. But those are the kinds of things that I see it becoming much more prevalent associated with it. I'm not necessarily an advocate that everyone's going to be walking around with augmented reality blogging their entire lives associated with it. But then I wouldn't have predicted the amount of presence that TikTok and stuff like that gets in videos. So don't trust that necessarily. I've been right on many of my predictions, some of them not so much. So
That was a really great answer too. And I agree. I really see it being, especially the virtual reality being useful for training, to be able to put somebody, especially if it was something maybe more mechanical, something that
yeah,
requires
yeah,
hands-on physical training, that you
yeah.
don't want to put them in an environment where they could get hurt, right?
Exactly. I absolutely see it being used extensively for that.
Yeah. This was a really great session, Eric. I think you were very well informed. I think our audience would also like to agree that you answered a lot of really great questions and gave us a lot of great information. I just want to remind everyone that if you didn't answer your question yet, or if you're watching this as a recording and you still have a question you'd like to ask it, don't be afraid. We will come back and make sure you guys get your answers. So feel free to send an email to marketing@4point.com and we'll make sure you get your questions answered, as well as to remind everyone that you can get a free one-on-one consultation to talk about how extended reality and AI and some of these more futuristic, more modern technologies can be integrated in your specific organizations, because everybody does everything just a little bit different. So let's figure out how it would work best for your organization. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for being here, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.